I'm late for me.
I blame the weather.
Yeah.
No.
I feel short.
Look, nonprofit health. Healthcare.
Oh, wow, yeah, so it's just my favorite.
High powered HPZ.
He was saying like.
What's that? Tell me what's that?
Once you make 1 million, take 1 million viewings
For
per
what?
salary, usually.
Income.
I don't know.
I was No, that's not me.
We're live on YouTube.
Okay, all right. Welcome to the North Logan City Council meeting for November 2nd, 2022. Looks like we have a full panel. We will begin with an opening ceremony. I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then Roger will give the prayer. If you'll all rise and say the pledge with me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Father, grateful for this evening, thankful for the safety we received coming, grateful for the moisture we've been receiving the last few weeks, grateful for snow in the mountains. Yes, blessing tonight on us that we may have a good council meeting. Grateful for the citizens who come participate and represent, and ask that we may listen and get questions answered. Grateful for all of our blessings. We say these things in Jesus Christ. Amen.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to adopt tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Okay, motion by Buzzy, second by Emily, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion passes. We have a whole folder of meeting minutes to approve tonight. 7 sets of those. I would entertain a motion to approve those meeting minutes or for any edits.
So moved.
Buzzy, motion by Buzzy, second by Craig, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that's unanimous. Alan, can you take us through follow-up on issues from previous meetings and a review of action items?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Jumping down through, we'll go over the Civic Center later on in the meeting. The garbage RFP, I think the interlocal entity formation is just about completed with the document, is what I understand. Thanks, Mayor, for the updates and for coordinating that. And that will go out shortly for another request for a proposal from the entity itself. Jumping down through water, we are starting our well probably this week. And along with our applications to the USDA for our loan, it will probably be in the next couple of weeks under consideration, and we'll be meeting with staff members from the USDA. Sewer, this past week we were successful, thanks to the mayor, engineer Jordan, Zach. We all went down and requested a bond or a loan from the Department of Environmental Quality. We were successful in that for $3.5 million that will fund phase 4 and 5 of 9 phases of our sewer trunk line. So a big portion, they'll buy us several years of replacing that trunk line, which was fantastic news to have that moving forward. And then Zach's going through several inspections and repairs this time of year. Streets, they're finishing up some of the crosswalk painting. You've probably seen them out through the city. Obviously, they're wrapping up the 1700 East project. They're in Green Canyon Cove.
And has that kind of just gone according to plan? We haven't really gotten updates other than approving it.
Isn't no news good news? I think that's kind of how
Is that
everyone.
true, Jordan? Okay.
I think it's a tribute to more of Colby and his staff and how hard they've worked to work with the residents, make sure it was a smooth process, working with the contractor. And that's my understanding, that it's gone very smoothly with them. So hats off to that streets department for doing that. And they're prepping for plowing right now. Which is good news for North Logan. We need the water. Stormwater, they're working on a project in Pheasant Hollow. It's kind of a subdivision was built in the 70s and 80s. Just need some help on their stormwater. Engineering, kind of the same projects we've gone over. Another project with Canyon Gates we're working on with some easements. Those are the primary things that we're working on with engineering. Parks, they're basically winterizing a lot of things while prepping for plowing and wrapping up the pickleball course. They'll probably take them down here soon, which was good to have them up for a couple weeks. A lot of the citizenry have been very appreciative of having those in. Trails, we are working with the state right now on a couple grants actually, and with UDOT on 3 more grants for removed paths off of the roads. One is for 60s for a safe route to school. The other ones are 1600 east and 1900 north for they call them a safe route. It's not necessarily a safe route to school, but a safe route through the community. And those are all the different grants and applications we're working through that we've submitted. And we'll probably hear back on them in the coming weeks. Recreation, they have a lot going on right now. Surprisingly, November is usually their lower month, but they've just wrapped up their carnival at the high school and a few other projects that they're working on. So that's off to recreation. They've done a fantastic job the last several weeks. Facilities are doing work around the library and the Lions building. Cemetery, thanks to the council for approving that bid. We'll start working on elements of that in the next few weeks to get secondary water to the cemetery. It's going to be a lengthy process to get that in, but it'll be a well worth it project in the long run. Community development, we'll go over a few things tonight. They've been working hard on one, the signage ordinance that we'll talk about tonight, zoning use table. But they're looking at a few other things related to some storage unit facilities, other things. Then we'll start talking about general plan and how it relates to that document in the future. Economic development, adds up to Scott. He's been working on our annual RDA report and wrapping in our new CRA into that report to the county. It's a long process and Scott has done that. And so hats off to him working through that. And that will be a great incentive for several businesses. The treasurer has been working on some nuisance properties with me, trying to get those wrapped up. And also the communities with an HOA or multi-unit, anything with multiple units on 1 meter, and a communication method with them. Just jumping down through here, several of these departments have just been extremely busy with the audit the past several weeks, and that's just wrapping up now, which will be presented at the following city council, the next city council. So each of them have been busy doing that, and Scott also provided some of our quarterly reports. If you get a chance to look at those are in the city council folder, quarterly financial reports. The library had their Harry Potter party, which was a success. And they also participated in the carnival, which was the carnival down at the high school in a fundraising activity. I think they raised $800, if I'm not mistaken, which was a great opportunity for the community to come out. Police were working with several things on them, everything from nuisance properties to parking concerns, and they've been good to work with in each of those regards and providing support and feedback. And then the fire department, I think they've just about filled 2 or 3 positions, the training chief and another full-time firefighter, if I'm not mistaken. And they're well on their way with their new station there. So just a few updates there. And I think Chief Hannig is out of town this week, so we won't be at this meeting and we'll have to excuse him for this meeting.
Okay. Thanks, Alan. Any questions from the council? Okay, then we'll move on to recognition of exemplary staff member. This one is submitted by Debbie Bond. It's about Scott Bennett. She says Scott oversees the audit every year and does a phenomenal job. He manages all aspects and makes sure that everything is submitted as requested. Audits can be very stressful as we are required to provide precise documentation in all monetary aspects, but Scott handles everything with accuracy and efficiency. Scott not only deals with audit requests specific to him, but assists everyone else whenever he can. Scott has such a great attitude throughout the year. He maintains a calm demeanor and a friendly smile and is always willing to drop whatever he's working on to lend a hand. We are lucky to have him. I'd echo that, Scott. I know that we have had relatively few, if any, audit findings for the recent past, and that's phenomenal. So, and I know that you kind of make our jobs easier. So thank you, Scott. So join me in a hand of applause for Scott. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the action item portion of our meeting tonight, starting with a public hearing to receive input regarding a petition that has been filed by the owners of Lot 22 in Deer Hollow subdivision Phase 2 to vacate a 10-foot wide public utility easement located along the east property line of Lot 22. After the public hearing has occurred, the city council may consider an ordinance vacating the 10-foot PUE on Lot 22. You want to give us a background on that, Scott?
Yes.
Just preliminarily, how many mustaches are we going to be seeing for November? I see two. Can give me a heads up if
Depends
they're
on how successful we are in growing our mustaches. So.
okay. I'd like updates.
There's a couple of wispy ones out there. Yes, thank you and good evening. So this particular request is for this corner lot you see there, parcel ending in 0022. This particular residential lot is a little bit over an acre, and they are currently working on building a home. They were approved for a building permit for a single family residence. And as part of that, that site work that they are doing, they submitted a second building permit request for a retaining wall that is engineered along that eastern boundary with parcel ending in 0040. The subdivision plat actually shows that there's a 10-foot public utility easement that traverses that eastern lot line. Those easements are intended to allow for utilities to be installed to service the property. And Alan, do you have that staff report in the folder you want to pull up? There's an exhibit in there I'd like to show you guys real quick.
This one.
Yep, yeah, just scroll down a little bit. So when these subdivisions are created, utility easements are put around the perimeter of properties just in the occasion that a utility provider would like to use one to run their services to the homes. But typically the side and rear easements are left vacant. Most of the utilities are put in the road. So if you scroll down just a little bit further down, there's an exhibit in there that shows their site plan. So that's the plat, the easement in question that is being requested to be vacated. And then continue going down there on. There you go. So the home was approved for a building permit. They're working on it actively, but because the retaining wall is an engineered structure, they were required to submit another building permit request. And this building permit request is where we identify that there was an easement on that property line that would be in the way of that wall being installed. Typically, those easements need to stay unencumbered so that a utility provider can use that for its intended purpose. And so when the easement is unused, there is a formal process that the state outlines for those easements to be vacated. But it requires us to look at whether or not there's any utilities that are installed, any future anticipated use of the easement. And then if it's found that it's not necessary, then we could request to have it vacated, which is what we're doing here tonight. Scroll down one more, Alan. There you go. So we looked at the utilities in the area. All the utilities are on the road. There's nothing that is along that side or rear property line. And also just to give some context, to the south and east are open space parcels. So those parcels are not intended to be developed. So there's no need to provide utilities to the rear of the property through that easement. One thing that you'll see in the staff report as a recommended condition, if the council should wish to move forward with an ordinance to vacate this easement, is with this wall being right on the property line, because of its engineered structure, it has a footing that is anywhere between 6 and 8 feet wide. And that footing would need to actually encroach on the property to the east in order to be right on the property line. So the owner has worked with that adjacent property owner, parcel 0040, and they've worked out an easement agreement between the two of them to allow that encroachment in perpetuity. So that agreement would, if we move forward with this vacation, would be recorded on title for both of those lots. So anybody in the future doing due diligence knows that this wall is allowed to encroach. Okay. You guys have any questions on the request or why we are asking to vacate this easement?
Just a point of clarification. I did speak with that adjacent property owner. And he said that they signed those documents yesterday.
Mhm.
For those footings that are on his property. So
yeah, so they're working together, mutually agreed between those owners.
okay. Any other questions from the council? Okay, then I would entertain a motion
I'll make a motion.
Do we have a
to-
public?
You have a
hearing?
public
Oh,
hearing.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry,
Let's
yes.
see if any of you have anything to say about that. Sorry about that. Okay, then we will hold a public hearing on this matter. Marie, we don't have those instructions, do we? I do not. So I will give you the rules. Be civil. We will have a 2-minute time limit. Don't expect a dialogue between the council members. Don't ask questions specifically of the council members. This is meant to be a public statement. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Mhm.
So with that, we will open the public hearing. Seeing no comments, we will close that public hearing. And Craig, you want to make that motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the vacation of the public easement on lot 22 of Deer Hollow subdivision phase 2.
I'll second. Okay, motion by Craig, second by Joni. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion is unanimous. We'll move on to a report regarding the implementation of a warming center at the Cache Valley Veterans Center in North Logan City. Ms. Bernard, do you want to speak to this one?
Hello, everyone. My name is Nicole Bernard. I am the Executive Secretary of the Bear River Local Homeless Council. And then I am the founder and chairperson of the William A. Bernard Warming Center. I think that Alan provided like an informational document to you all, as well as a guest agreement that we have shared. It's a rough draft, so some of that might change as we continue to move forward. But I just wanted to come and speak with you today about how this project even became a project and where we're at now and what we'd like to do. So I am currently a master's social work student at the Utah State University. Last year, I was in my undergraduate program, and I did my practicum at Bear River Association of Governments. That's where I did my internship, and that is the main homeless service provider for Cache Valley. So anyone who's struggling with that is directed to go to Bragg, and that's where the assistance programs are available. So during my internship, I was able to help create and establish a homeless street outreach program where volunteers would go out once a week for a couple of hours in the morning and try to make contact with folks who are sleeping in their cars or other places not meant for human habitation. And we really, kicked that off in the winter time because that's the most dangerous time, right? So through that experience, I recognize that there is a huge need in Cache Valley. One night in particular, it was January 1st of 2022. We went out around 10 p.m. and within 2 hours, we found 8 individuals sleeping in their cars. Temperatures that night were like single digits. There was a family with 2 kids sleeping in a camper. They had like a space heater plugged in somewhere, but that's not very safe. There was an older, like a pair of siblings who were sleeping in a van. The brother had just had like surgery on both of his wrists. There was an older man who was in a van. He was sick. And there was another gentleman in a van, and his van wouldn't turn on, and a window was broken. So we had kind of plastic. A lot of times folks, when they're in their vehicles, they'll try to turn on their car and let it heat and run for a while, and then they'll have to turn it off. So as you can imagine, that was just a really incredibly difficult thing to see. And then I can't even imagine what that was like for those folks, right? So after that night, I was extremely upset. Fortunately for those folks specifically, we were able to get them into hotels. There's a hotel voucher program that happens in the wintertime here. That's pretty much the only resource we have in our community to provide emergency shelter for people. And that is done through Bragg. There are also a few other nonprofits that will fundraise to try to provide hotel vouchers for people. But again, that's not always an option. And that only happens if there's funding available. So fortunately that night we were able to get those folks into a hotel. I went ahead and took my experience to the next Bear River Local Homeless Council meeting that occurred a couple weeks later. And I brought up my experience, and there's members on this council who are leaders in the community, elected officials, leadership in different agencies and organizations, religious faith leaders in that group. And so I did bring this up and did ask, this is unacceptable. We've got to do something about this, right? So feedback was that people were willing to listen and kind of have continued meetings. And so at that point, I went ahead and did some research on what was happening in other communities similar to ours. I found a great warming center in Montana, Flathead Warming Center in Kalispell, Montana. I began working with them, putting together kind of like a project proposal of what this could potentially look like in our community, holding meetings again with these same community stakeholders. Around April, I submitted an application for what's called the Ivory Prize. It's a Utah State, it's a private foundation, provides funding for a student leader who's trying to do a project in the community. And you submit project proposals, and then they look through those proposals and will choose something to fund. And so I did submit the proposal for the warming center and was awarded that prize in April. And so I actually received $10,000 of funding to implement the program. And so then at that point, I was like, all right, this is a reality, right? And so we've got a board of directors. You see on the document there, I've got some excellent people on my team. The idea is this is not a homeless shelter. This is almost like an emergency crisis response. As I mentioned, we do not have any type of emergency shelter here other than hotel vouchers, if they are available, if funding's available, and CAPSA, which is an amazing organization. However, their grant requirements only allow them to assist folks who are currently experiencing like sexual assault, domestic violence. So that does leave out a large group of folks in our community who are struggling with homelessness and housing insecurity. And so during the winter time, it creates an extremely dangerous situation for these community members. And it would just be a shame if someone passed away because there was no option for them, right? So the goal of this warming center is to literally provide a safe, warm place for someone to be overnight during the coldest nights of the year. This is a temporary center. It's going to operate, we're hoping to open in December. And then if we have the resources and the need is there, we would stay open until March. We're starting our volunteer recruitment now. We again have been working hand in hand with Flathead Warming Center in Montana. They've been operating safely and successfully for 4 years. And so we're grateful for their support and guidance. We have identified 2 locations. So we'll be starting out in December and January at St. John's Episcopal Church in downtown Logan. We've been approved by Logan City for their conditional use permit process, and we'll open up there hopefully just shy after the first weekend of December. And then we are so happy and grateful to have the support of Cache Valley Veterans Association and Phil Redlinger and his board of directors, and be operating out of Cache Valley Veterans Association in the months of February and March. And we thought this would be a great opportunity to see, what works at one location, what works at the other, like what that looks like, so that we can make adjustments and kind of see what's best for the guests that are going to utilize the services and our volunteers. And it's just great to see our community coming together to provide this for the most vulnerable. I attached the guest agreement in your that you should have in your documents there. And again, this is a draft. It's pretty set in stone. We might make a few modifications, but the priority here is safety is the #1 priority here for guests and volunteers, right? And the neighborhoods. A lot of times there's a lot of stigma and misconception around what homelessness looks like here. A lot of folks, immediately think of something in LA or Salt Lake City, and that's not necessarily the case here. We see a lot of families, a lot of kids, people who have jobs, but can't afford a place to rent or can't find a place to rent, because I'm sure, as you know, the housing market here is just incredibly difficult, and the competition for a place to rent is also the same. So a lot of middle class, like middle to low income folks are finding themselves in situations they never thought they would find themselves in. And so again, this is not, a warming center is not like the solution to the problem, but it is a life-saving step that we can take to provide some humanity and like dignity for these folks so that they can be in a safe, warm place with other people who care about their well-being. Do you all have any questions or?
Well, first of all, thanks for the work that you do. It's obviously a very worthy cause. I did have a question. I know that just to be in compliance with city ordinances has to be distinct from a homeless shelter. So what does that process look like? And how do you kind of maintain those boundaries between, you know, the voucher system versus a temporary place?
So the center, as I mentioned, is only operational during the winter time, like during the winter months. It's just temporary overnight. Folks will come in, they'll just check in, sign the guest agreement. And then there's constant supervision. There will always be 2 volunteers at the center when it's open at all times, providing active supervision. And we're not supplying meals or showers. Yes, there will be cots there with blankets in case someone needs to rest, because people need to get some sleep, you know. It's a health thing, especially folks who are experiencing homelessness. They don't get a lot of good sleep, right? So that's why we have cots there. Other than that, you know, we can provide like information of other community resources. But as I mentioned, if you want to think of what this would be like, it's almost like a crisis response. So imagine if like there was a natural disaster here or something, and we had to set up like cots, blankets, water bottles, snacks in like a gym for community members to go during that dangerous time. It's a similar type of, that's kind of how we're modeling it, you know.
Okay. Questions from the council?
What are you separating as far as the men and women and children? How do you have that set up?
So we will have we'll have some room dividers set up to provide like privacy, but at this point we're serving everyone. We're not going to be sending like one group of people to a different building. The reason we want to use CVVA is the front area. It's a very big open space, and that's the easiest to provide supervision, because you want to be able to see everything like in that area, right? So all of the office doors will be shut and locked. And again, there will be 2 volunteers providing active supervision. And if, you know, parents will sign an agreement that their kids are in their supervision at all times.
So is this already allowed, or are we expecting conditional use requests for this too?
That's a very good question. In fact, it's kind of a new item for us to look through, and hats off to Nicole for working with our building department and going through that. So when this is brought before our building department, they have to look at what is allowed. One of the most difficult aspects is when you start having an area where people are sleeping, it turns it into a different occupancy level. And so that's what we had to analyze, what could be allowed in this current occupancy, which is an A3 or assembly occupancy. And so our fire marshal, along with our building official, went down and walked through the Cache Valley Veterans Association to look at how this could be used under the current occupancy without a conditional use permit. But however, there are conditions. They do have a max. It's similar to the occupancy of this room, but the occupancy level is set at 54 people. The individuals have to stay in the front area of the building. That front room area. All the sleeping arrangements, as Nicole brought up, are temporary in nature. They can't be permanent beds or anything else. They have to be cots or something similar. And then there has to be, and this is one thing, Nicole, I wasn't aware of, but you have it in your other documents, a full-time individual or staff member has to be present and awake throughout the evenings that it's operational.
Okay.
Craig can probably provide some
Yeah,
more
I'll weigh
up-to-date
in a
information.
little bit. Couple things, and first of all, you and I have worked together down at St. John's as well. And I so appreciate what you're doing and understand what you're doing. Understand your story with your family. My parents were homeless missionaries for the Church of Jesus Christ a couple of years ago, and there is a need in our valley for something like this. But we also have to weigh out the safety and things in the buildings. When we do change the occupancy use of a building, there are a lot of things that we evaluate. This building was originally built as a B occupancy. Now it's going to be used as an A3. And so there's a lot of different things that come into that. To use it as a R1 is our highest hazard, because people may be sleeping that are unfamiliar with their surroundings. If the building fills with smoke and they wake up, they may not be able to find their way out of the building. So there's certain things that we need to make sure we have in place. This is a good building to do this in, same as St. John's, because it has a fully sprinkled building. It's fully alarmed with the addition of full-time staff at all times is important. Also, smoking regulations, where you allow them to smoke or not, is a fire hazard we see a lot. And so with those conditions, it works out well. One of the other things that we also, why these other conditions are important, is even just because it's a sprinkled building, sprinkler systems aren't just all the same. There's different densities and different water quantities that come out of different sprinklers. So a sprinkler for a B occupancy is not the same type of a sprinkler system for an R in a hotel or motel. And so we weigh those things out with conditions. But in this case, with the conditions that are outlined, I'm in favor of approval.
I was just gonna add, I think it's great too. I'm glad we can help here in North
Yeah.
Logan. I was just curious, why switch halfway through the years? Is that just how it works out with the church and then the Veterans Association?
Well, we actually, so as I mentioned, I kind of started this process back in January, right? This like whole thing. And we had quite a few different meetings, and that was one of the first things. We got to find a location or else this isn't going to happen, right? And so we kind of went through some options, and Phil Redlinger and Jason Samuels were like just immediately like, we want to help, we want to support. And so we really wanted to take advantage of the option to have two available options, right? And so we thought, it's our first year, this has never been done before, so it's going to be kind of an experiment, and we're going to be flexible. And we know we can't plan for like every type of emergency, right? But we know that we can immediately address any concerns or issues that come up, and we plan to do so, right? But yeah, we want to show our appreciation for both CVVA and St. John's, and utilize those locations and just see, like, is one a better fit? How does this operate? What would this look like? What if we could increase staffing? What if there's a need, right? Like, what if we start turning people away at one location or something like that? So that's kind of why we thought we would do that. And hopefully it goes smoothly. But again, it's going to be an experiment.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I guess one quick question is like, so you take a typical night, you find somebody, they sleep there, you wake up in the morning. Is that something that the individual will stay there through the day? And or is the idea you have resources there to find them a more permanent, or there's a chance they would stay another night? I mean, every story is going to be different,
Yeah.
but I didn't know how that ultimately went, because you're going to find the need, and then, but then
How do we, yeah. So they would not stay at the center during the day. So we would, we're opening up in the evening, and then we would have everyone leave by like 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. in the morning. They would need to leave. At that point, while they're at the center, we'll have like pamphlets for DWS, if they want to go for Bragg, we'll have information that we can give to them. Even then, if they come in and there's like hotel voucher funding available at a certain agency, we could potentially refer them, hey, Bragg has a hotel voucher program, go there tomorrow and see if you qualify for the voucher program, right? So we want to get them, like, the center is like a safety net for people who are in extreme need. Like, if we can get them into a hotel for a few weeks on a program, that's fantastic, right? So that's the way that we would connect them to those types of resources. And then from there, they would need to work with Bragg to apply for like homeless assistance, rental assistance, and things like that. So at this point, with this being the very first year that the center is operating, we're really just trying to get it open and running. And then who knows? I mean, I would love next season if we could, bring in more wraparound services. Wouldn't that be cool if we could bring a caseworker in during the evening and they could help them like fill out applications, or maybe we bring a mental health counselor in, right? So there's steps that we can take this like as we move forward, but I think we've just got to kind of get this going first and see how it works. But yeah, so we would try to connect them to community resources, but the purpose of the warming center is it's very simple. It's to save people's lives and get them out of the cold.
Can I ask a question?
Sure. Where's that?
Um,
Oh, sorry. It's like weird. It sounds like a voice coming from the back of the room.
Your Ivory Prize recipient, is that how you're funding this?
So that is the $10,000, and we've been using that to apply for nonprofit like all of the applications, all of the initial startup costs. And we are fundraising at this point. So we have submitted our nonprofit paperwork, and we have acquired a fiscal sponsorship through Nonprofit Legal Services of Utah. And so they're acting as our fiscal sponsor. So when we fundraise, we can, if someone would like a tax deductible receipt, we would have them donate to Utah Legal Services on our behalf, and we could provide that receipt. Or if someone just wants to make a smaller donation on the website, they can do that. And then their donation just wouldn't be tax deductible until our determination letter comes through from the IRS. But we've created a budget. We're going to be finalizing that next week. And, we've still got quite a bit left over from the Ivory Prize, which we can use to get some of these supplies. But really, this project is pretty doable. It's very low cost. We're not having to pay rent. It's mainly kind of a lot of just getting these one time, okay, we've got to get the cots. We've got to get these. A lot of the things too can be donated, right? I know we've already had an overwhelming support from the community. What do you need? Do you need blankets? Different things like that. And so, but yes, we're using the Ivory Prize, and then we have a plan to fundraise.
I hope this is really successful for you.
Yeah.
I don't really have a ton of questions. I just
awesome.
really hope it's very successful and this leads to good things.
Yes.
So,
And one thing I forgot to mention, I'm sorry. So CVVA, we're going to be planning like an open house. We did a similar thing at St. John's. So probably sometime in January, we'll be having an open house at CVVA where we're going to kind of do like a mock-up of what it would look like. And so we'll have some cots set up and some room dividers, and we'll have some refreshments, and we would love for you to come. We'll open it up for community members, people in the neighborhood there, businesses that want to come and check it out and ask questions. So keep your eye out for that. I'll make sure that there's an invitation extended to you, but we're going to have an open house, and please come down to the center when it's operating out of St. John's. That would just be like a great experience, right? You could see it in action and really see the lives that we're impacting, and that you all are impacting by allowing, us to really do this in North Logan at Cache Valley Veterans Association. So I appreciate it very much.
Okay, thank you. Looks like we don't have an actual action item on this. Is that correct?
So we're just approving some of the documents and conditions that are in here in this, in these, sorry, in the
the way it's
folder.
written on the agenda just says report. Does that mean we're allowed to have an action item? That's what I'm asking.
But being on the agenda, we can certainly, and I'll go ahead and do that, just make a motion of a support nature for this activity to occur.
Yeah, consistent with the documents that
Yes,
we've reviewed for
consistent
this.
with this document and the conditions.
Okay. Motion by Craig,
Second,
second by, who's that lady? Emily?
that's fine.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion passes. Thank you, Nicole.
Thanks.
All right, we'll move on to consider approving modifications to the land transfer agreement parish 2022, allowing the construction of a secondary irrigation pump house in the designated open space of parcel 04-112-0005 in the Canyon Ridge subdivision. Who's gonna tell us about this one?
I can give you an update.
Okay,
So about 5 years ago, we started looking at some of the properties throughout North Logan. Through our previous bonus density subdivision ordinance that did not require the specifics regarding the open space that was donated, or it could be kept under the ownership of the individual. The city has several open spaces throughout the bench. A lot of them serve a purpose for stormwater. A lot of them have a trail easement that goes through them. This particular property used to be subdivided right here, or divided. Sorry, my cursor is not showing up. But parcel 0005 is the parish residence, and the parcel kind of adjoined to them on the south is the stormwater drainage area. And at that time, we were working with the parishes, and we donated the property to them with a lot of conditions in the letter and agreement, specified what they would do, including a trail would be installed on the south side, which they have done that, well, about 80% of that. And then after that, they started working on a pumping station. At that time, the canal, the Logan Hyde Park Smithfield Canal, or the Cache Highline Canal Company, wouldn't allow pumping above this canal. However, they had conditions. If it dropped 20 feet, then you could pump out of it. And so they dug a 20-foot deep hole on the east side of the canal and then pumped out of it. They're trying to meet every single condition that they came up that seemed impossible, but they were meeting it. What that created, though, is an opportunity for the parishes to look at providing irrigation services, secondary irrigation services across the bench, starting down low and working their way up through phases. They will put together a larger comprehensive irrigation plan for several areas up on the bench, because it is permitted now or allowed by the canal company to pump above there if they have the shares. And at one time they came in with a plan to look through that. Right now they're evaluating that plan to do something that might be a little bit more efficient, and that is the incorporation of several smaller secondary irrigation basins across the basin, across the bench, kind of outdoor irrigation basins, or enclosed. Regardless, then they can use the pressure from gravity to pressurize the system and just pump up constantly out of a smaller line than a large pressurized system from the pump. Regardless, they need a pumping station. And so they have the ability to get the water out of the canal into a sump and then pump out of that. They do not have a pump as of right now, except one that goes to one residence. So what you'll be seeing in the coming months is a plan that will come in before the city. Their proposal is to use the city's public utility easements that we just talked about earlier. And the city would more than likely work with them hand in hand to help them with this project. The reason I say that is because alleviating our capital demand through a secondary system we would be far ahead than putting in 2 or 3 more wells and 2 or 3 more reservoirs, which each cost $1 million to $2 million, by simply working with a secondary irrigation company to provide irrigation to the bench. And this could go across the bench, but for right now it's planned for basically the area and the lower portions of Canyon Ridge, maybe foothills, and a few other lower portions of Mahogany where they can get water to. And then they plan to, like I said, bring water up higher on the bench and then use gravity to bring it back down to the residents over time. Again, they'll bring in that whole plan. Tonight, what you're looking at, though, is a request to come in and put in a pumping station or a pump house. And when we looked up the original agreement that was signed, they do have the ability to do this, but it just says they need the permission of the city council in order to do that. So we've gone through, we've made a few other edits. One is that if there's damages through here from stormwater or anything else that comes down, because it is a stormwater easement, the city will not be responsible for that. So that is one alteration. But then one other thing is that the building location, the facade, the building plans must be approved by the Public Works Department before they can actually install the pump house. And when we say a house, it would be a shed on top of the pump itself. So we've been working with the parish family. We've signed this agreement. They're amenable to all the conditions here. And then putting in that. If you look at some of these photos, I told them to send these over. These would be examples of what they're looking at, but that would have to be finalized and then submitted to the Public Works Department for approval. And those would be just located there. I think there's actually one that shows the rough location right here. That red square. Keep in mind, though, that there is it's either a 10 or a 15-foot easement on the east side of the canal through this whole area that winds up from the south side of Canyon Ridge all the way to 3100 North. That's for a trail. And so this would have a trail easement in the future along that east side. So it would have to be outside of the trail easement, outside of the setback, outside of any other easements that are located there. And so those are the things that the Public Works Department and the Building Department will be looking at when a shed is requested. Normally a shed that small would not need a request, but because of the electrical content that's going into that shed, and because it's within a former area that we did own, we would like some say as to what it would look like and how it would function.
So as in the documents that we have where they have that proposed location, is that within, like, is that where it needs to be?
It should be. When we looked at that, we would go out and exactly measure it. It
Okay.
may need to be a few feet, like literally a few feet at most east of there.
Okay.
But I think it is about right where it's sitting there. So we look at that and make sure for stormwater and outside the setback purposes that it would be okay.
So there will be ongoing communication with this. Like if we approve it tonight, it would be, that's kind of assumed that they would fit within the easements, the
Yeah.
existing easement.
It's basically the head nod to let them move ahead in providing some plans for a building and letting them work with the Public Works.
Can that be
Department.
seen from the road or is it kind of hidden back there?
No, you could probably see it.
The only reason I say is at some point, I know in some areas like near mountain, painting it a darker color to match the land. I don't know. I mean,
Definitely be able
it
to
looks like
see
a
it.
house. It looks like an
You'll be
Airbnb.
able to see, there's a tree in
Yeah.
the way. There's a tree.
There's
in-
also like
It
the
drops
road
down.
is
Oh,
higher
okay.
than
I
the,
didn't, that's why I
Maybe
didn't.
low road level for sure.
Yeah, okay, I mean, I just thought that you look at all those wonderful homes that are dating, like in
Can you
Wellsville.
see it,
but
though?
if it blends into a mountain, it's kind of.
well,
My
it's
question is
not
if you
like
can see
cinder
from the
block.
trail. Can you see it from the trail?
yeah.
Oh, you'll
Yeah,
definitely see
right
it. from
Yeah.
the trail.
Because I guess it kind of does look like an Airbnb in a way where I could like,
It's like the little White House.
I
I
feel
mean,
like
it
the
looks
scale
cute.
picture's
I don't think
too
it-
big though. I mean, it's
I guess, but like,
yeah.
Can people stay in it when they get tired on a hike?
Maybe you throw a room in
I
there.
think you're kind of looking into stuff that's maybe a little over the top, meaning some of these homes could just have a shed regardless. That looks
know.
like this.
And,
or
and
way
they
more
could have
elaborate
that
than
without
this.
the,
And
without any application.
Yep.
So I think
No.
those are super attractive. I think if we were saying, hey, build a cinder block building and slap some paint on it, I think I'd feel differently about it. But these are
they're cute.
really attractive. I'm fine if people mistake it for an Airbnb, they can knock on the door.
My question. my
It's
question is this.
objectively
Is there-
cute.
Is there a culvert under the road there for that drainage?
There's a culvert under the road and then a drainage culvert
So
that
are
comes
there-
out from the
Are
road.
there gonna be anything as far, all those drainages got made naturally by a reason.
Mhm.
Water and everything came down those drainages. And it could happen in natural disaster again.
We've had a lot
Will
of
the-
water come
Will the
down here.
building be placed up on the side or something where it's not gonna get taken out by a flood or a slide or something?
That's probably the primary thing we'll be looking at.
Yeah.
Greg brings up a good point because in the last, 5 years, we've had 300-year storms.
Yeah, there's a reason those drainages are there and why we don't let people build homes in them.
And so that would be the case. We would look at that, make sure that the landscaping kind of steers that water around there. A lot of water has come down here in the past few years through this area.
Yeah,
Do
it
we-
does. It runs through there pretty good.
Do we own the property where that would go?
We used to, we don't
Used to,
now.
we gave
Parishes
it to
own it.
parishes.
So we're really
Parish should
just
Own that.
bound by the previous agreement and we're modifying it a little bit.
Yep.
So today we're really just considering whether or not a building should be, like, whether we can approve a building, but we already kind of have contemplated that in this document. So we're just kind of keeping our word as specified. And then we have an assurance that they will work with city staff to make sure that that location is appropriate and that the design itself is appropriate. Is that a good summary?
Correct. That's
Is there any
100% correct.
reluctance on those
No,
points?
not at all.
Okay, then I'd entertain a motion on this.
I move that we approve the modifications to land transfer agreement for the parish lot.
Okay, motion by Buzzy,
Second.
second by Emily, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, we'll move on to, consider a city initiated proposal to amend section 12C-600 of North Logan City signage ordinance to add provisions allowing the co-location of new signage on existing and legally non-conforming signs.
Okay, so this is a city initiated effort. We had some businesses coming in looking to potentially locate in some vacant retail space on Main Street, and they had indicated that there were a couple of provisions in our signage ordinance that were a little bit troublesome to them. And of course, with economic development, businesses don't always, disclose exactly where they're going or, just how interested they are in a particular location. But what we wanted to do is take a look at it and just see if there was anything that really was maybe a stumbling stone for a business who's looking to locate in our jurisdiction. So as we read through the signage ordinance, what we found was our existing language for what we call freestanding business signs is a little bit restrictive in that for multi-tenant projects, the anchor tenant really is the only tenant that can have signage out on Main Street, like as a monument or a pole sign. And all of the subtenants or, ancillary locales can only have facade signs on their building itself. So as you're going down Main Street, really the only representation is your facade, and some multi-tenant projects are set back quite a ways. And so really for a new business coming into town, they only have one facade sign several hundred feet off of the main thoroughfare. It's very hard to gain recognition. So what we looked at was this language that basically says you cannot co-locate your sign on this freestanding business sign. You cannot have ladder signs, which is where you have multiple businesses on the same sign face. And that's what our existing sign ordinance says. And so as we looked at that, we thought, there's obviously a reason we don't want to make a cluttered mess out on Main Street. But we also want to be business friendly where we can at least give each business, a fair amount of recognition from the thoroughfare. So this was an example of an existing freestanding business sign of a multi-tenant project. So if you're familiar, the Cow Ranch building actually has a couple of available spaces for additional tenants to move in. And the Cow Ranch sign is actually what we call non-conforming. It's legally non-conforming because it is a pole sign. And our ordinance right now, as it was revised several years back, looks for any new freestanding business signs to be a monument style. Monument style being that it's not on a pole, the sign face is affixed to the actual sign base, a little bit more of a modern look. So with an existing legally non-conforming freestanding business sign, you cannot co-locate under our existing ordinance. So we looked at that and we said, okay, what could we do to maybe make this a little bit more business friendly? And so what we looked at were a couple of examples. The one you see here is an example of where we would allow them to modify their existing legally non-conforming business sign to add a couple more tenants onto the sign face. So we worked with the planning commission over the last couple of meetings to draft up some language that would allow this to happen for both existing signs and new signs. New signs would still have to be a monument style, but existing non-conforming signs such as a pole sign like this would be allowed to co-locate. There are some stop gaps, obviously, to not let it get out of hand. If you want to go through that language, happy to read through it. Otherwise, we do have an ordinance for your consideration. If you'd like to go through the red lines, let me know. But that's in a nutshell what the proposal is.
So Scott, how many other businesses might this affect? Do you have a sense of that?
Not many of these pole sign style. A lot of these newer signs, if you drive down Main Street, most of them are starting to be the monument style. It seems like that's the preference when they come through anyways. Walmart does have a pole sign. Subway has a pole sign, and there's a couple others that you'll notice. But for example, the Kohl's sign is a monument style. But it's actually non-conforming with our existing language because it actually has co-location. There's actually the pickler below, which nobody caught that when that came through for sign permit, but if you read the detail of the code, that's what it says. You cannot do that. Under the proposed language that we have before you, that would be permissible. So it would allow for that sign to become conforming.
So the new ordinance would allow multiple tenant spaces on the same monument sign.
Correct, within reason. So there's limits as far as how big and those types of things that are built in.
Because I'd rather see multiple tenants on one than several monument signs.
That's the
Just
idea.
nodding.
Yeah, totally agree.
So keep in mind, this is for a multi-tenant project. Each commercial pad is allowed to have their own freestanding sign. So as you'll notice there, Frito Burrito, just behind the cow ranch, they actually are allowed to have a freestanding sign because they're their own parcel,
Yeah.
business pad, and so they get their own sign. But where we have a building with multiple tenants, that's where we're trying to be more accommodating.
Okay.
One question I have, and it's not necessarily about this specific ordinance, but the pole sign for Cal Ranch was there prior to them buying that building.
That's the old Kmart sign.
Yeah, so why do we allow that after change in ownership? Why would that not have had to come down and be a monument sign?
Same use.
So the non-conforming language, it does require for a sign to be replaced and become conforming if the new use, land use, is conditionally approved. So if you look at the land use table, if it's a permitted use, they can just change out the sign face and continue to use that non-conforming sign. As long as they don't modify it, make it bigger under the current language. What we're saying is you may modify a non-conforming sign if it's for co-location purposes.
Right.
only.
So the bigger question for me then is there an effort to look at that modification to change the language so that if a parcel changes ownership, that they then have to go to a monument sign?
We could do that. That's not how the language is drafted.
Isn't
Currently.
I
or as
don't want
proposed.
to do
It's
that.
changed a little bit with use because this is a mercantile occupancy. It was a mercantile before it's Kmart. It's the same use. Now say that comes in and becomes
A car dealership.
a car, well, that's still an M.
I guess that's so retail. What's a?
Auto repair garage. Now it's a different use.
Sure.
And now the new sign rules come into play.
So we'd have to look and see each
that right?
use is a little bit different in its intensity and how it affects, traffic and usership and all of that. Right now, as the language exists today and as it will continue to be, if it changes from a permitted use to a conditional use, then they would have to bring this into conformance. But as proposed, it still allows for the changing of the sign face if it's a similar use that's permitted.
And I admit I'm taking us off track. I like the changes for this. I'm just curious long-term, with the pole signs. I think you've seen it. I think Logan, right, has a very strict non-pole sign, but In and Out got their pole sign. So they must have some language too that allows.
Actually, we
Don't
read
dig
their
on that.
ordinance
That
and
was
they
a
still
pretty
allow for.
controversial.
That's what I'm trying to figure out, what's
Well,
fair.
I think Buzzy, you bring up a good point that this is something we probably need to address on a more global scale. Whether Alan and I have talked about this, but whether that's through a master plan, or whether it's just on its own, like forming a subcommittee. So I wanted to kind of get your guys' temperature about that. Buzzy, you like the subcommittee options? Oh, wow. So we got our first member. That's good. But I think that we can do kind of both, really, have a subcommittee that maybe comes up with some proposals. Anyway, and we kind of talked about, branding,
Sense of
making-
place.
but it's complicated. So this is an undertaking. So
Well, and I
This is
think,
good for now.
yeah, I mean, the reason I'm thinking long-term is I think we're next in line, right, for a lot of this commercial growth. I mean,
let's hope.
let's hope. Let's just be optimistic and say we are. So now would be the time to attack something like this, I think. But
I agree.
cool.
So maybe if you guys could you have your first volunteer at a sign subcommittee. He's our chairman.
I think
So,
a subcommittee is. the best
okay,
place.
well then on this topic, I would entertain a motion on this.
I agree with the subcommittee. Move
Oh,
forward with that.
We're motioning.
Sorry,
those.
Joni, you agreed to be on the subcommittee?
I think here, yes.
Make a motion, we put Joni on the subcommittee with Buzz.
Okay.
Second,
All
No.
right, I'm losing control. I would entertain a motion specifically on
sorry,
this
I just
sign.
wanted to second that you and Joni are in the signage.
Hopefully someone's noting that.
Yes,
Anyway,
that's-
I would like to
Corporation.
propose approving the ordinance for the North Logan City signage to add provisions allowing the co-location of new signage on legally non-conforming signs.
Okay, motion by Emily,
I'll second that one.
second by Joni, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion passes. Thanks, Scott.
So not to
Thanks,
muddy the
Scott.
waters, but that the mayor brings up a very good point. Now that you've approved this ordinance, this is basically just one item that we'll be looking at in the several months. Scott had the idea, I want to take credit for it, but it's a much bigger thing than I can envision. But rebranding on every level, where you go and you look at wayfinding signage, sense of place signage, trails, parks, all the way down to business and commercial sector, to really create a sense of place in North Logan City.
Yeah.
And so this will be a large undertaking, even going as far as including it as either an appendix or part of our general plan is another option, whether adopting it into that or part of the visioning process for North Logan. But we do have the identity crisis. And so basically making things a lot more conforming. We'd even want to work with businesses on that. So not on our park signage or welcome signage, but on the actual business signage where we have a balance between, you'll see some cities that are so restrictive, you have no idea what businesses are located in any business park. And we don't want to go that far. We don't want to go the opposite direction where we're the Las Vegas of North Logan
Joni and I have it handled.
or of Northern Utah.
We got it.
So,
But I mean, maybe some more flashing lights, right?
Some
okay,
neon.
you,
You need-
mayor will not be on the committee for signage.
All I'm saying is like maybe a pyramid with a huge light shining into the sky would give us an identity.
And a huge tower. So we can find each other.
I really do like that idea and I've never noticed signs more than I have now. So it's something that I think we do need to get right. And we're probably at kind of a crossroads in that way. So.
Yeah.
Okay,
Perfect.
thank you. We'll move on to consider a city initiated proposal to amend section 12C-1001 of the North Logan City zoning ordinance to indicate that government administration offices and city administrative offices are permitted uses in the R1 zones. Going to give us a quick rundown.
Yeah, so as we have been working through the building permit review for the city offices, civic center, we noticed that in the zoning use table, this particular use is not permitted in the R112 zone, which is curious because the ordinance specifically mentions police station and library as permitted uses, so civic type of uses, institutional uses. But this particular one is conveniently missing, so we're just dotting our T's, dotting our I's, crossing our T's to make sure that this is a permitted use before we move forward on breaking ground on this new administrative office building.
Okay, I don't think we need a lot of discussion unless,
I move that we approve the amendment to section 12C-1001.
okay, motion by Buzzy,
Second.
second by Emily, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that's unanimous. Thank you.
I was just gonna add one thing. Is there anything in the future you may want to look at that allows for public utility things in those R1 zones and things like that?
Yeah, there's actually a
Stations, water
separate
houses.
line item specifically that is utility related. Yeah.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to consider authorizing the hiring of government affairs consultants to work with the federal officials and agencies on funding options for North Logan City capital improvement projects.
Sorry, Mayor. We're probably going to have to push this one to the next meeting.
Okay.
There's still some crossing of the Ts and dotting the Is, not crossing our Is and dotting the Ts, as Scott would put it. But the
That mustache is getting to you, Scott.
but in the next couple weeks, we will have that information regarding the as we spoke last time regarding the federal portion of this, seeking after federal funding. There's some good things that we put together. It's just not at that point where it's ready for approval. That's my fault. Sorry, we'll have it
No,
ready
that's-
for next meeting.
That's great. And yeah, that's great. Okay. Then we'll move on to the work session items, updates regarding North Logan's water capital improvement projects. It is.
While Alan's getting this ready. So just as if you guys have been up the canyon lately, you may have seen there's been some work done grading the site for well 5. We've got to make a few adjustments on that. The well driller will be showing up here in the next week or so to begin that process. We're also going to start pulling the wells, well 1 and 2 in the coming few weeks. So we'll take what that consists of, pulling the pumps out. We'll send cameras all the way down to the bottom, find anywhere we're getting sand and stuff and clean up those casings, do some measurements and stuff like that. And then USDA, we've been starting communications again, started again today. So we're finishing up with sending them more of our financial documents and finishing design work. So
I had a
Great.
quick question, like now that it's kind of slow and we have moisture coming a little bit.
Mhm.
So like in Smithfield, they lost a well. I mean, is
It is,
there,
yeah.
is there, I mean, or is it just, things change so much with wells and stuff? Is it beneficial to buy a backup one and store it somewhere? Does that make
So-
sense what I'm saying? I
so
mean,
what happened in Smithfield? You're talking about the pumps. So like,
yeah, I mean,
not really. So most of our pumps can be repaired quickly. We lost one this year and we had to have it overnight from Texas. It cost us an extreme amount of money to get it here, but it's not a very common piece. So to have one sitting, they're very expensive. I mean,
okay,
we're a couple
and I
hundred
just, I'm
dollars.
not thinking out loud, I'm just like, you hear
Yeah.
stories like that and then there's immediate need,
Yeah.
especially with transportation. I don't know.
Yeah, so with our well motors, they typically don't have issues if we keep up on them, we keep maintenance on them every year. How they got in trouble is their well pulled sand and it ruined their motor because they were pumping sand all year. And so that's why we're pulling all of ours. So what
Because there
happened-
wasn't enough water? Is
Yep.
that, okay.
Yeah, they got low, started pulling sand and so we're gonna be going.
I
through all of
think
ours
maybe
then.
the preemptive measures that typically you guys have taken is just in restricting use, right? Like not as
Yeah.
much like anticipating repairs.
Kind of. Our problem is our wells run constantly. So other cities don't have the same problems we do. We run 24/7. Most of them run 24/7 for a week. We do it from May to June or May to August. So we get a little more aggressive in our rehab over the winter. Like this year, we'll be putting a lot more money into them than we've really ever.
That's what
done
I'm saying, is I think we need to do that, whatever, I mean, if that's the way we have to run, then I'm all about, if we need extra whatever, just, I
Yeah.
don't know.
It's all
Jordan,
about preventative.
Jordan's
maintenance.
saying this as an understatement. When he says pull a well, they're literally pulling out the motor and the entire well and redoing that with wells 1 and 2, which are 40-year-old wells.
Do you guys hire that out then? Is that,
Oh,
We
yeah.
do, yeah.
It's
so it's kind
very
of like when you have to, you want your timing belt done, so you're there and they're doing the water pump, you you want to do the
No,
timing.
this is pretty, yeah, like you were saying, they're a
Yeah.
couple 100 feet in the ground, so
Are you still,
So
is
on-
Jack still pumping or is it off?
it's
now?
off. So we shut
It's off.
jacks
Oh,
off
good.
in September.
That saves us a lot of electricity. when
Yep.
it's good
But
when
as
we turn
Jordan put
off.
that in perspective, our wells, like running those 24/7, when I talked with other cities and they said, yeah, we've had one well that ran for 3 days straight. And we're like, we've
Oh,
got
wow.
6 that run 24/7 for 4 months. Literally, that's the extreme we're in. So when our well went down this year, we didn't wait several weeks or months to try and fix that. And yes, it does cause a lot of damage to the one in Smithfield. No, we had to have it back up and running. So we just went ultra urgent. Jordan and his crew got it up and running the next day.
So does some of that burden get reduced with the addition of a well?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, any additional infrastructure we put in, wells, tanks, distribution lines, that all reduces the wear and tear on what we currently have. Because like Alan said, if we can start to cycle wells off and give them a couple weeks to rebound, I mean, that's huge. So
And the
Absolutely.
reservoirs will help out with that
Oh, okay,
immensely this next year.
okay.
How do
Well,
we
that's
tour
pretty
some of
nice.
this stuff? How do we tour like the water treatment plant? and-
anytime you want to go.
Yeah.
That would be fun. That'd be
We
good.
talked about it.
I'd
we
actually
talked
really
about
like
it,
to do that.
but we never did set it up. Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe I just didn't show
It's
up.
really cold
did.
right now, but
I've never.
it's the coldest
been on
place in
one? Yeah, I
America.
have.
Never sees the sun.
It really doesn't see the sun the entire winter months. So
Gee,
It's
Maybe
a nice time to
June?
Go though. It's low
Let's go.
stress. It's
Let's go.
clean. Let's go.
Right.
Yeah.
You wanna go right?
Anytime you want to go.
I moved
Yeah.
to adjourn.
Overruled.
So seriously though, can we? I'll
Yeah,
text you.
anytime. Let me know for sure.
You guys probably want to see it.
I actually
Sounds like
really
everybody
do.
else has.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
No,
If you could
I
kind of
very
just
much
propose a
wanna see it.
time, that'd
I'm
be,
totally
it can be low key.
For sure. We can just show you like the plans with what the USDA, because a lot of people know, but some of the council may not know exactly what we're doing. With the
Yeah.
USDA, so.
what you'll probably want to do, Jordan, this may sound hilarious, but we've Bussy,
Order in the
we've
court.
reached out several times to the council members and said, hey, we'll give you tours. We'll go through this. We've never seen much interest from people like
That was probably
Roger.
before we.
I've
dropped
been
it.
there through it.
Yeah, I
Um,
haven't,
Before.
because Roger,
So-
I
Craig
just
said he
don't-
didn't. I've
Now
never.
is, I actually don't mind it
So
being cold,
Craig's
but if now's
very
the best
good.
time to see it, like it's less busy for you, I'd
Yeah.
I would
Oh,
now's a
legitimately
good
like
time.
to see
So-
it. Okay.
Me too.
So what we'll
Yeah.
probably want to do though is do the same tour we give groups. We've taken scout groups, other groups through these facilities.
Do you take?
This next summer, we'll probably want to go up to the very top, which will be really fun to see. You'll see why North Logan exists. And you have to go up to Water Canyon to see why we exist. But then this winter, you can probably do kind of the Star Wars method where we go to episode 4, and you're gonna want to take them through the treatment plant, which you can do at any time.
Yeah.
If that's okay.
Yep, for sure.
We just go through. So maybe we'll schedule that for the council in the coming weeks.
Yeah.
It's a great opportunity to really see why North Logan exists, and we exist because we needed water.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Let's go.
The other thing I'll just add is that the USDA loans pending right now, that's a significant amount of money. Part of what the previous discussion about government affairs consultants is just trying to reduce the burden of those loans. So we're trying to fund those projects in, from as many sources as we can to kind of reduce the burden on our taxpayers. But this is just infrastructure. Both this and the sewer are unavoidable expenses.
Yeah,
So,
they are.
Nice.
but we've gotten good news on it recently, so that's good. Okay,
Okay, anything else?
I don't think
Well,
so.
thank you.
Thank you,
I'll send
Jordan.
the invite.
Okay, updates on the Civic Center.
I'll just give a couple of very quick updates, and the mayor, you probably have some other updates as well, but where am I? So looking at the site, the city offices will go here, kind of right there at the entrance to the police station. So right now we're in discussions, very earnest discussions. We received all the subcontractor bids, and they came in at a very favorable, near where we were anticipating, which is fantastic news. But one of the subs is going to come in and pipe this canal along this entire portion, which is a win-win for 3 reasons. One, it will not flood out the future. It takes care of the groundwater where our future city office with a basement will be located. The current police station does have issues with groundwater getting under the police in the summer months, so we want to eliminate that. And then it provides us a larger area to put the city office in that area. So we're going to have to plan that. We're going to have to plan a temporary access in and out for the police station, which will probably be, oh, you can't see my cursor at all. Just west of the police station and exit out through the library. And then just south of the police station that you can see in here, the new access drive will come in directly to the east, out to 6th East. And so we need to put a water line in there to replace the existing water line under the access drive for the police station. So the 2 first things we'll be doing is piping the canal and putting in a water line that will come in from 6th East, which already has a water line in it. So you can see kind of a rough outline of where looks like a path of someone walking through there. That's actually a water line. You zoom in here. So that's a water line that you see in that rectangle shape. And so we'll tie into the side of that water line.
Does that new subdivision up there need that for sewer coming out too, or not?
No.
There's sewer. going-
Oh, sorry, you're talking about Smiling H?
Yeah.
They'll have to do sewer that'll go north. Some of it will go through Aspen Meadows. Some of it will come south and go out to 6th East, or sorry, 2500 north. So that's a very good question. It kind of splits through the subdivision. Most of it will go north. Halfway through this north portion, between 0006 and 0072, we'll probably head south out to 2500 north. And then the sewer, obviously, along the site will just come out to 2500 north for the new city offices. But those are the updates right now. So you'll probably see some work, some groundwork, some excavation in the coming weeks. As soon as those 2 projects start, right after that, they'll start digging the footing and foundation for the new building.
Yeah, it's great news. Okay, and then just kind of to accompany that, you guys got my email, I'm assuming, about talking about fundraising for the community center. If you guys would just take a look at that and maybe give me some feedback, that'd be great. That's kind of the next thing that we're going to focus on once we get really started on the city offices. Okay, then we'll move on to reports from city officers, boards, and committees. Scott, nothing. Jordan, Lieutenant Olson. This is taking forever.
This one?
I'm just saying the walk up.
Nothing crazy on our calls. We're pretty normal. Had 125 calls and 77 traffic contacts. Anyone? Not you?
Not me.
right.
I abide
What does
by
that
all the
mean?
rules.
You know, making sure we
I,
try to stop just as many, like, we try to stop everybody equally.
oh, nice.
I like on your report to put contacts versus tickets. I want to know
Oh.
the meat in that.
Do you want?
So of
to?
the 77, how many were tickets? You could bring that next council
I
meeting.
can.
That'd be
but
nice.
I can guess, I can throw you a guess that it's probably right around a third, about 33%.
Okay.
I did my ride along and it was awesome.
Yeah.
It was such a
Who
good,
did you go
good
with?
experience. I went, it was a Friday, the 20th, I want to say. It was super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't leave you in a car, just,
No, apparently that was the next shift. I went right before that Halloween party.
oh.
So,
right.
so anyway, it was really cool.
Who hasn't, does anybody else want to go that hasn't gone?
Yeah, I'm still in.
I think I'm the only one who has.
I would
Well,
very
I
much like
guess
to go.
North Logan,
Early in my
almost
career,
everybody-
I
Did they?
spent many shifts with
Making
you
us
guys.
sad.
I'm just trying to probe them a little bit.
I think that's good.
Yeah, so.
Let's do better,
no,
guys.
Just their mayor has gone too.
Okay.
So.
That's right.
It's just a really cool thing. And then, you get some,
calendar or something. That's what.
yeah, I think the thing is that you kind of have to be a little bit proactive. Like if you signed up for the date, like they don't remind you, you just have to show up.
No, I didn't even, I
Yeah, we
thought,
read
I
it.
was waiting for like a link.
I don't know.
where
I
could
signed
sign
up for it on a physical sheet.
Oh, okay.
Reaching if you want us.
No,
But we
sorry.
can-
They
I
did
just
talk
wasn't
about
quite
like
sure
a
what the
Google
way-
Calendar.
Who did?
I think it was Kent at the last meeting.
Yeah, he's a lot more technical. But we can
Okay.
make sure that happens.
I'll just come in then and schedule a time. Like, that's all I need to do. That's easy.
And maybe I can bring it up tomorrow at Police Commission, just, and then we can email out
I'll
a
be there.
calendar or something. Okay.
Yeah, so I'll make sure that, other than that, this hire, he came in today, got all his equipment. And we did lose Oliver Thompson, who's going to be an ARS owner or something like that. He's gonna go train in Boise and then he'll be stationed in Twin or something, or Idaho Falls, so. We still have one current opening, but we also have 3 people that are kind of beating down the door, so we're not really. In a rush, we'll get these other guys trained and going and
Okay.
then we'll go from there.
Great. Okay.
Any requests, anything you need to see us do?
So one thing I had a citizen just mentioned that while it's dark on 3100, I don't know, that's when the kids are getting on the bus in the early morning, especially the middle school kids.
Okay,
Just maybe giving
up on 1600.
3100 and like the whole
Yeah.
length, really.
Okay,
I don't know exactly what to do about it, other than maybe we can
change.
mention it in the, that's true. But maybe we can mention it. It's just something maybe to look out for, just while kids are out there in the dark. I think it's kind of hard to see.
And I always just remind, this Lieutenant Olson, but Wildercrest and that whole area there, the plows focus there first, and there's a few
Right.
cars that are still, I don't think you've gotten the
Yeah,
message
so
yet.
we're gonna-
I talked to one of them yesterday.
yeah, we're gonna hammer the parking tickets. And we're trying to look at a new way to do that, because the old write them up way is great until you get some of these younger police officers that don't scribble really well.
Oh. Well, and maybe that's something too, like, to just give, I know that you guys are maybe using your website a little bit more, or
Yeah.
social media, but just to give people a friendly heads up that we are gonna have to enforce
Yeah,
it.
we're making some reminder cards. So they'll
Awesome.
Go out for a little bit and then nobody will have any excuse to say we didn't see that, hopefully.
Right.
So,
Okay,
Okay.
perfect. Thanks so much. Scott? Marie? Alan?
Just one item, the Christmas party. Marie will send out an RSVP or sorry, a flyer, an invitation. You need to respond by 18th of November. Which gives you a couple weeks. We need everyone to be there at the Christmas party, so
It's a good time.
It is fun.
it is.
It's fun in that big.
It's
open
pretty
area, too.
relaxed. It used to be a little bit more formal. Now we just do more like a Christmas bingo with tons of prizes. So
Thank you.
hopefully everyone can make that. And
I don't know, Buzzy, we might have to go back to formal
I
where,
haven't missed one yet, I don't think.
Huh.
We didn't have it during COVID, but.
No.
They're so fun. The
okay,
Food is,
all right. That's all from Alan.
That's it.
Okay, anything from the council? Okay, then I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
second.
All right,
Aye.
motion by Craig, second by